Namaste. Welcome to a new Paradigm of Education podcast. I'm your host, Monique Sayers. Today we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Ainee Cha. Before I go ahead and introduce Annie, I'd like to introduce our podcast. So, a new Paradigm of Education is here to awaken humanity to make a shift into a conscious change in education. So, we get together with global leaders, with parents, educators, students, anybody who wants to make a change in education. And we talk about, well, what is our vision for a new paradigm of education and how are we going to activate that together? So today I want to introduce to you Ainee. So she's a mother of two beautiful children, and we're going to be talking about compassion and heart-centered mindfulness. And I want to open with a quote that she's written, which is really beautiful. She says, "I didn't come to teach them, I came to love them, and love will teach them. Love does not sacrifice. I did not sacrifice anything for them. It's a choice I made to love them unconditionally and be present for them." That is so beautiful, that quote. Ainee.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yes, it is true that we thought as a parent we're here to teach them to do this, to give them this and that. But I thought over the years of being a parent and being a daughter myself, I realized that the best education is to love them, and love will teach them.
Yes, 100%. 100%. I feel like that's the seeds of this new paradigm, is us all being able to come from that place of awakened joy and excitement. And from there, that's where the education can flow in all different kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd really love to know a little bit more about your background. If you could maybe just share with people a little introduction about yourself so we can understand who you are.
So obviously you have introduced me a little bit that I'm a mother of two, and I live with my husband as well. We've been married for 20 years. So I was actually a engineering consultant, but over the last 6, 7 years, I have left the corporate industry and really going into teaching mindfulness and compassion. So right now, I help men and women in their midlife to look for who are looking for balance, to find some balance and clarity in their life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what I was curious about was with your own children. So how have you been able to like raise your children with these mindfulness practices?
Um, I think, to be very honest, it's very hard for a mindfulness teacher to teach their kids mindfulness, because then there is that kind of a dynamic that you're a parent and you're a teacher. Yeah. So I like to put it in a way that I'm not here as a parent, so-called parent or teacher, but I'm your friend. I think that is really, really important, because then it opens up a whole new perspective for them to share their deepest aspiration, what they like and they don't like, but in a very open communication way of being in a family. So I used to, but of course, I also learned from mistakes. I used to come, let's meditate together. When they were young, okay, it's fine because they follow. But as they reach their teens, no, it's not easy. Yeah. So I learned that along the way. So as far as I'm concerned, the basic, it's already there when they're young. Like I had my son is 13. A few years ago, he started not joining us in a meditation. But guess what? When I went into his room and kissed him goodnight, he is actually on insight timer doing his own meditation. So, you know, yeah. So it's sort of, you have built that background, you have built that grounding for him, that he knows when he needs to use it, he will use it.
Yeah, that's amazing that he has that foundation and also that choice, that free will. Yeah, like as opposed to it being like we must do it now or whatever it is, that he can choose when it suits him. And it must be so empowering for him and his growth and his learning and everything like that to be able to, access this tool of peace and calm within.
Yeah, not being forced to do something. I think that's really important because, as we know, we are children before, right? So I learned because I don't like to be forced, When I'm forced to do something, I retaliate. I think same goes with many people. So I learned along the way and then try to find a balance between being a parent, being a friend, and being a teacher.
Yeah, of course. And I wanted to know more about you were raised, you said to me before the podcast, you were raised Buddhist. And so before we share about all those principles, I just wanted to share that we can reframe it, that whatever she's sharing, we don't need to take it as a religion, that we can take it as principles of life, values. And I myself really align with those values. And I also align with many values in the world, whether it's Buddhist or other religions or non-religions. But I'd really love to know, because I find it so fascinating that you were given this way of being raised. Could you share a bit about it with us?
I think from coming from an Eastern tradition and from a Buddhist lineage, meditation in the terms of chanting has always been there. And I remember following my mom to the temple and you pray and all that. What I feel, you can actually frame it in a way that it is a value, kind of a foundation, discipline in a way. I learned a lot of discipline where you take off your shoes, you put your shoes aside, you walk in and you bow. So a lot of this come from that tradition, that culture, and it builds the value in every person. And that's what I reckon.
Yeah, that's one aspect. I love the taking the shoes off. And what about some other principles as well? Like, I don't know, I know there's a lot. Like, I've been myself, like, my experience in Buddhist practices has been more like I've done camps, like meditation camps, and they give us like a list of like principles to follow that we must agree upon before we even enter these camps. And I find them really beautiful, because then they're kind of also contemplations that I have as well around these principles that I've said that I would follow. Not that we're saying it needs to be a dogma or anything, but just I think it's fascinating. Could you share a little bit more with us?
Um, well, I feel that the way it is, the way I was brought up in a Buddhist tradition from an Eastern culture, it's really a lot on discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Like we queue up, we line up, and it is that discipline that builds the value of our as an individual, the
Mm-hmm.
morale and how you work on things and you work as a team, not so much individual, but what I learned. There's a lot of respect there, a lot of love. And I remember a Zen teacher that I love listening to his podcast and his teaching. He says you must love in such a way that the person you love feels free.
Mm.
Yeah, that really hits me at that point of time when I first read the quote, and I was contemplating about that. And what I find out that those traditions, those discipline that I learned is really to love, because it starts from the heart, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I remember there's a teacher who says, um, the Dharma is in the heart. Everything comes in the heart. Even mindfulness comes from the heart. The word chitta, although it's mindfulness, it's actually heart mind. You can't separate the heart with the mind. And it's
Mm.
not mind heart, but it's heart mind, because it's really start from the heart. So if
Mm.
your heart is open, everything else just fall into place. You respect people because your heart is open, right? You don't say words that hurts, things like that, right? You respect when you go to a cultural place or a temple because your heart is open. There's love in there, right? So I feel that everything that we learn along the way, as you describe the principles of the Buddhist tradition or the Eastern culture teaching, it's gearing you up to really open that heart. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I felt it in my own understanding and my own experience.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And it's really amazing that you have compassion in your heart, because there's one thing that you can say there is love, but love is sometimes a challenge. It can sometimes be like a block inside the heart. And if there's a block in the heart, then actually giving the love is not coming from the purest place, because you're not a full vessel yourself. I know this. I know
Yeah.
this to be true. And I feel like what you're describing to me is what I would describe as what I'd call the flowering of the heart, compassionate awakening of the heart. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yeah, you can say that. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And it's not something that we can say like one day we wake up and we like, hey, can you please flower my heart? It's like a gift that kind of comes from somewhere. Did you notice that within
Oh,
yourself?
yeah.
Like that one day you just were
Yes.
flowering, and but it doesn't, like, it's not something that you can be like, I wanted my heart to flower right now. Like if there's still lots of obstacles that are there, it's like, could you share more? I'm trying to be, I know my background on
Yeah,
it, but I was
I
curious
know where
about
you're
yours.
coming from.
Yeah.
I know where you're coming from, Monique. It's true. You know, you can't just wake up one day and you know and hope that your heart is awakened. It takes practice. Now, mindfulness is a practice. Compassion is a practice, and that's why it's called a practice. Right? You take your sit every day, so you are practicing doing the things with your heart open. Now, so most importantly is setting that intention to, okay, yeah, I want to open my heart, I want to love everybody. I know we all have attachment as one of the Buddhist principle that we have attachment, right? Being in a family, there is a lot more attachment than with a friend or someone else or colleagues and things like that, because there's also this karmic ties, right? The karmic that is
Mm.
going around. So it's the practice to help us to open the heart to look at things from a different point of view. Then this is where you apply the mindfulness attitudes. So being curious, be beginner's mind, non-judging, letting go, and all those attitudes that comes as and when we go into the practice.
Yeah,
Does
exactly.
that
Oh,
is that what you're talking about?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's 100%. And I was feeling into this state of consciousness is really beautiful for our children as well, because I feel like when their hearts are awakened, that anything is possible, and there's joy, there's happiness and curiosity for learning, focus, it's concentration. There's so much that can come just from this one state. And the best part of it is that you feel so good from it as well, right?
Yeah. I have to also say that as children, they are born with an awakened heart,
Yeah.
right? It is. As they grow up, there's a lot of societal inputs in the pressures, environmental inputs that blocks our hearts. So again, it's like you're going a big round, finding Joe. Have you watched the movie? Um, it's about going through our life and coming back to where you originally started. Right. So as
Yeah.
children, they are born with that awakened heart. And if we can, um, at this stage, teaching the children with the awakened heart before they get influenced by the society, that would be the best teaching, because the Dalai Lama also said that if every 8-year-old is taught meditation, the world will be a better place.
I know,
It
that's
is at this
amazing.
stage.
It's a really, really beautiful, it's a beautiful gift, and it is actually one of my prayers for humanity, is that we can all awaken, because why do we need to suffer? You know, like, we've come to Earth. Why is it that humans suffer so much when there's this other state of consciousness that we can have as well, you know? I know myself, I've gone through that process, because I know how it is to be in suffering, and I know how it is to be in awakening. I know both states of consciousness. And I think that's why now I'm such an advocate for bringing this state of consciousness to everybody, it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change what you do in the world. I mean, it can, but it doesn't make you like, rise up into the sky and disappear. You're still really normal, really grounded, really focused, really able to do everything. It's just that there's happiness that comes with it, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. It's just that you don't get defined by a title or a name or whatever. Who you are is just who you are. And there's so much freedom in there to choose
Yeah.
what you want to do. Yeah. Yeah.
What about, did you want to
Wow.
maybe share some principles or some ways that people maybe who would like to get started or know what to do? Like what would you recommend they could do?
I would say here we're talking about cultivating a loving heart, especially for parents who have kids. We're talking about educating the new paradigm of educating kids. And I think the best way as speaking from the parent's seat, right, not a teacher's seat, is really to create a safe environment and positive environment for our kids, for them to be themselves and allow them to feel that they can be anybody they want to be, right? So if we as a parent, we do not judge how they are going to be, right, then we actually help them to open up that perspective, open up that hey, it's okay, nobody's judging, right? So it is this 8 attitudes that I like to share. So if you like to take a notepad, take this down. So the first attitude of mindfulness is non-judgment. So you don't judge people and you don't judge yourself, obviously. And being patient, trust in the process, right? Second is patient, beginner's mind, because there's so many things that's happened, right? Your past does not determine your future. So it's always good to adopt that beginner's mind attitude and trust. The fourth principle, the fourth attitude is trust in the whole process because you need to trust, right? And obviously, the fifth one here is acceptance, right? Things happen, right? There are people who say that things happen to me, but there are people who think that things happened for me, right? But there are also people who think that things happen through me and by me, It's so important. So accepting what is going on in the right here, right now, it's important. So when we are accepting, again, this 8 principles itself, they're interlinked, they're interrelated to each, You practice one or two, you're actually practicing the rest of them. And non-striving means that there's no expectation of what it should be and how it should be, right? So non-striving. And when we are practicing non-striving, there's also an attitude of letting go, isn't it? There's no attachment in there, right? So the idea, there's no certain form of notion or idea there. And obviously, lastly, just being grateful. Gratitude is the last, love. And whatever happens, know that you're in that. You're exactly where you needed to be.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love all of those principles. And I also love that they are focused on the present moment and the non-attachment. And it does feel like the consciousness of a new paradigm, because a new paradigm is kind of this oneness consciousness, this state of oneness where we're not striving or competing. We're just all there present in our gifts and all sharing with each other. And I can really resonate with these principles that you've shared, that they are also aligning with what I feel like is a new paradigm. And I just want to reframe one thing you said, that it's not necessarily for teachers. I really feel like it is for teachers and for parents, what you shared. Like, imagine if all the classrooms in the world were using these principles. Imagine if all the teachers were, having gratitude in the classroom, or, sitting in that state of presence. What a shift that would be as well, right?
It is. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, as a mom,
Yeah.
we don't want to be teaching them this, but embodying the practice.
Ah, good. Yeah.
We're not like going into a classroom and teach them, because I know I've been through that. Telling them, teaching them don't work because you're the mother, you're the
I
parent.
understand now. You're going to
Right?
embody those
So
principles and then they follow
you
you
got to
like that.
embody those principles and you lead by example. So then it comes with that The second thing, as what I've learned that I'd like to share, is to connect with the heart, to really listen. Again, you listen with a compassionate heart, to leave the heart, not to listen with giving advice. I've got that from my daughter. She's 18 now, but over the years, because we have practiced safe, open environment, they can say anything they like to say. There's no judgment. Sometimes she would come and complain. She would come and tell me what's going on. There's stress. 18-year-old, there's going a lot going on with that age group. And she would just tell me, "Mommy, I just want to say and listen. Don't give me advice." You know, yeah. So that's something that I learned, and I really like to share, because a lot of teenagers, they just want you to listen. They just want you to be there. Your presence is the most important than your advice, because they don't want
Mm,
your advice. Yeah. Yeah,
mm,
and maybe your advice does not really fit into their environment, because we're not in their era. You don't know what they think, you know. Yeah. So I think the best way as a parent to really connect with an open heart, deep listening, and listen with a compassion there, that, how can I help? All right. If she says, "No, I don't need your help, I just want you to listen," you're already helping by listening. Okay. And and to not respond or react when they're not asking. Yeah, so you want to build that trust, with an open heart, that they're gonna be okay, and allowing them to feel what they're feeling is really important, because our body needs time to process, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant emotions. um yeah, allowing that, because we don't want to actually put it in a framing it in a positive or negative or good or bad, because there's no good or bad, right, Monique?
mm,
It's an emotion. Yeah. Yes, it caused unpleasantness, then let's just process how unpleasant that is,
mm,
without having an attachment to, okay, this emotion is bad, or this emotion is negative, or this emotion is not good. No, we're human beings. We are subject to experience lots of emotion. In fact, if you really look into researching that, a list of 1500 emotions. I
wow.
don't even know all of them.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yes.
Wow.
That's a lot, isn't it? Yeah. So we're not gonna want to identify with those emotions, but knowing that it is there, it's present, just letting it come.
Mm, I love
Yeah.
that. That's really, really, really
Mm.
helpful to not attach to, oh my gosh, I feel so angry today, which means that I am this, as opposed to it being like, okay, I feel this in my body, it's going to pass. And then I will move
Yeah.
on to feel something else, and I'll move on to feel something else, or maybe I'll feel nothing and I'll just feel peace for that moment, whatever it is, right? Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that aspect and how you used it with your teens as well. It's yeah, it's very, very helpful.
Okay. I think that's about all. Really open communication with them. Yeah. Love them, accept them. That's when you are getting them to be themselves.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So then what I'll ask you then is what I ask everybody who comes on the show is, so then what would be your vision for a new paradigm of education, if you could have any vision?
If you have any vision, I actually do feel that if um, everyone in the world in the future, as parents, as teachers, or as an adult, is mindful, then we know that our next generation will have a better society, or better place to be in. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful vision. And I truly believe the same as you. And I see it happening for real in so many different types of settings and homes, and people that I've connected with through this podcast as well. So many people are all saying the same thing, just in different, slightly different ways, with slightly different
Yeah.
principles. But everybody is, I feel like, as a collective humanity, like as a consciousness, that we are ready for this. We are all ready to really, really step into like our super selves, being fully awake and fully transmitting that energy, because that's going to also change the next generations and the next generations to come. So I think it's a beautiful phase that
Yeah.
we're going through at this moment in the world, you know?
Yes, yeah, I totally resonate with what you just explained. It's beautiful to look forward to that change that, then our children and their children or grandchildren will have a better place to live in.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so if people wanted to like reach out to you or like wanted to like connect with you, what is it that you like help people with exactly and how do they reach you?
So I help men and women in their midlife to find balance and clarity in difficult times. So yeah, so I teach mindfulness and compassion, and I also teach in schools and kids. Those are volunteer work that I do.
Mm,
Yeah, so yeah, you can reach me, search me on YouTube, just Ainee Cha or aineecha.com. I'm currently actually moving into more of a collective and more holistic picture of. So I'm setting up a new company. It's called the Heart Mind Wellness.
mm,
So it is something that I'm looking. My vision is really to bring together this teaching as a collective and to educate the whoever comes, who to educate the world, the people, the community, that it is really time to come inward, go on a discovery journey where the first thing that I'm actually putting together is not going to come out soon yet, but putting together traveling afar and journey within to really take people on a overseas retreat in Nepal that I'm
ah,
looking at. Yeah. So giving them the time because it's very hard in my own experience working and journal, journeying the inward journey where you are is just quite difficult for a lot. So we
mm-hmm.
want to take them away from where they are and look inward. Yeah. So
Oh,
that was something that
wow.
I'm working on.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I've been in Nepal many, many, many years ago, actually. It's a beautiful place to be. Beautiful in the mountains, like peace, quiet. So yeah, I'm sure that'll be lovely for everybody. And I do also feel like this seeds of the new paradigm, it does come from within. It starts with everybody making that change within. And also what you were sharing around holistic education is really important. Like Mahatma Gandhi, he always has spoken about education, which is education of the heart, the hands, and the mind all together. And this forms holistic education. And I really feel like they're almost ancient principles, but they need to be reinvited back into this paradigm perspective, and it will help everybody to learn like get the whole picture, not just one aspect of the mind, but the whole thing, because the body can't function without the mind and the heart, like what you were sharing. And I just wanted to add on from what you've been sharing, because I've also been researching around this as well myself, and I know that we are not the only people researching this, that it's really going to be implemented
No.
within this
Sure.
paradigm shift, and everybody's doing their part. And so I really love that you have come and joined us on this podcast with your offering for how you can support people and make a shift, you know?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. It's really nice meeting you and sharing my experience.
Yeah, it's been really beautiful to hear your wisdom. I love it so much. Thank you so much. And I actually feel my heart has been feeling very calm on this podcast with you. So we have generated some beautiful energy together. And I hope everybody on the podcast can also resonate and take a moment to feel in their heart center as well and just enjoy the process, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Always remember that we're always where we are supposed to be, and it's always a choice, right? A choice to move. Like you say, I just want to add on a bit. It actually stands when you talk about awakening the heart.
Mm,
Putting this together, just to remind that everybody, we all have this innate wisdom, all right? The awareness, the compassion, and the wisdom, it's the three roots that we have deep in the core of who we are, you know. So all we need is to allow ourselves this time to choose to quiet down, and this will come out because it's in you. Yeah,
Yes.
we just need to think on that part, right? Yeah.
That's really important. Yeah, that's really important what you just shared. I love that very much. That education comes from within. So thank you for sharing that. I understand fully what you're sharing, and I'm glad that you've shared it with everybody else as well. So everybody who's tuning in today, thank you for joining us on a New Paradigm of Education podcast. If you're wanting to connect with us, we also have a group, A New Paradigm of Education, and also a book called A New Paradigm of Education. So there's plenty of ways that you can join and be part of making a change. And whether you join us or not, that's completely fine. But I'm just grateful that you are tuning in and deciding for yourself how you can also activate education within yourself and support our children as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, Ainee, and thank you everybody else for tuning in. So namaste.
Thank you.